education in America, the status quo is not working because the same student that's wrestling with, do I want a 100-year mortgage? Do I want a 120-month car note? Do I want to go in debt to learn? We have to stop being a repository of knowledge
Mm.
and start being a curator of experiences.
I'm Josiah Kennealy. You're listening to the Young Adults Today podcast, and so glad to have you here as a leader, as a listener, as a viewer on YouTube. Here's the deal. What do you do when the status quo isn't working? Well, we sit down with President Darnell Williams. Dr. Darnell is the president at North Central University in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We talk about higher education changing. We talk about how to lead through challenging times. And also, he has so much insight for young leaders. You're going to love this episode. While you're here, please subscribe. That way you'll be plugged into the Young Adults Today ecosystem. This is a library of 375 plus interviews with generational researchers, thought leaders, pastors, authors, and experts in young adult ministry on how we reach the next generation for Christ. Enjoy today's conversation with Dr. Darnell Williams. And today's episode is presented by the Minnesota Young Adult Weekend. It's coming up soon. It's coming up fast, May 15th through 17th, 2026. We do this every year. Join hundreds, over 200 young adults from across the state of Minnesota from more than 29 different churches are gathering together to grow in godly community, to spend 3 days together seeking after the heart of God. Well, we have Ray Clark coming to preach from Grace Young Adults in Houston, Texas, Shaughnessy Roosh from Emmanuel Kids. We've got Pastor Corey Kalinowski from New Life Church, who's a lead pastor. And man, there's breakout sessions on relationships, building wealth, approaching adulting, mental health. This is going to be a weekend like none other, but it won't be the same without you, without your young adult ministry. So get to Lake Geneva. Details are at youngadults.today/the-WKND. The link to sign up is in the show notes. I'm Josiah.
And I'm Micah.
And we're thrilled to be joined by President Darnell Williams from North Central University. Hey, thanks for being with us.
Hey, man, thank you guys so much for extending this invitation to join you on your podcast.
We're thrilled. God's moving to go for the jugular first. What are you seeing God doing? Is there hunger among college students, among young adults? What do you see God doing in Gen Z?
You know, that's a great question. I'm a parent of a 26-year-old, and I see it in my son's life. I
Wow.
see it in that demographic. There is a hunger for authenticity. There's a hunger for real spirituality and real spiritual encounters.
Mm-hmm.
There's a desire to not just be flooded with theories and ideas, but real practices that I can live out and live into. So I think it's a great time to be leading a young generation. I think it's a great time for us to make sure we create that space for those opportunities for them to express themselves fully comes to pass.
I love that. Well, Dr. Williams, having a 26-year-old and knowing him and the generation of which you're serving and seeing him in that, where has your passion for young leaders or just even young adults at large, like where did that start and how has that grown over time?
That's a great question. Uh, I got saved when I was 16 years old. I grew up in a single parent home. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and pretty much had every, negative indicator against me, against somebody in my demographic. My father was a Vietnam vet.
Wow.
He came home from Vietnam, just a broken man. And I have grown to say he had so much pain that he didn't have much margin for anything else in his life.
Mm.
Uh, and so I know what it's like to be the young leader, to be the person in the room And I was a young leader with builders and boomers. I'm a Gen Xer myself. And our ideas would get quickly shut down. We were almost treated like the way they raised their kids. You're to be seen and not heard.
Mm,
Wow.
And I just know what that made, what that did for me. So the upside is I got a chance to learn to be quiet, to listen, to pick up on things organically. It wasn't a time where they sat down and said, okay, do this, don't do that. But you watch and observe. But then it also, as I stepped into leadership, gave me the heart to say, I always want to make sure that younger leaders are at the table. I always want to make sure that they feel seen, heard, valued, and appreciated.
Mm.
And somehow I looked up one day and this beard was full of gray hair, and I saw a rear shot of myself, and I got a bald spot in the back of my head that I never rarely get reminded of. And so now it's I really got to put into practice and bring more intentionality to that. When I was a local church, I pastored for 28 years. When I stepped into a new church, one of the first things I did was hire a kids pastor
wow.
because I know the power. We've got to be committed. Every generation has to be committed to discipling the next generation. We're one generation away from a
Mm-hmm.
gospel witness. Just if one generation gets it wrong,
We're in trouble.
we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
To talk about this cultural moment, we even before we pressed record, I wish we would have caught it, but we were kind of having a conversation about adolescence has expanded,
Yes.
perhaps things have changed, and whether it's fewer people are getting married, whether it's getting married later in life,
Hmm.
if it's fewer kids that
Mhm.
people are having, all of these different things. Home ownership is more
Yes.
challenging than ever for like interest rates and housing supply for like young adults. And adulting, we've said often on this show, is hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Like there are mentors, there's
Yes.
wisdom available. At the same time, I think that our cultural moment provides just a unique window of opportunity, like in history, even in American history, you haven't always needed a young adult ministry. If
Yes.
people are getting married at 20 and 22, and by 24, they've got a child or two,
Mm-hmm.
like I know how easy it is. We have three young kids. It's really easy to get connected with other parents at church because you're picking them up, you're dropping them off.
Yeah.
You're also there for your kids. But for a young adult who's 28, 26, it's a little bit harder. It's easier to maybe slip in and slip out. What are your thoughts and vantage point having served in a local church, served in a college campus? Thoughts as far as leaders and the importance of essentially why is young adult ministry so important?
Yeah. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I love to look at numbers. So as a pastor, one of the numbers I would keep an eye on is okay, children that start in kids' church, right? What's the, I'm going to say, conversion rate of those
Hmm.
that go from kids to youth ministry? And there's a drop off.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ones that go from youth ministry into the sanctuary,
Whoa.
huge, probably the biggest drop off.
Wow.
And I began to just talk to the young people that we pastored and say, what happened? And they said, oh, youth ministry was very relational. We had a tribe.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We had people that were experiencing life together. And then we step into the sanctuary and we don't have any relationships built.
Wow.
Our church was probably a little older,
Hmm. Hmm.
right, than what they were accustomed to and what their friend group was. And then the city that we lived in tended to be a city that as you grew up, you left to go pursue life. It
Wow.
wasn't a place young people tended to stay. And so all these dynamics made me have to say as a local church pastor, we got to create a young adults ministry
Mm.
and almost give them the relational connection of a youth experience, but help them wrestle through the issues that they were dealing with as adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
My last message in chapel to our students was the title, When Life Be Lifing, right? Life is tough, man.
Every
Adulting is
day.
no joke, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to my son one day. He was like, "Oh, Dad, I got to get up. I got to do this." Like, this adult thing is no joke, is it? No. And so, who would have thought, Josiah and Micah, we'd be talking about 100-year mortgage?
Mm. That's insanity to me. Can't even.
Who who would have thought that you can finance a car now for 120 months for 10 years? I mean, it just a generation ago that would have been unfathomable, but yet
Mm-hmm.
today
Here we
it's
are.
reality. And so you got to make a choice. Do I buy a car? Do I live someplace that has good public transportation? What does it look like to house my wife, my sons, my daughters, my husband? What does it look like to do that? These are all complexities, right?
Well,
Yes.
you shared from your own experience right there, and I'm so glad that you did. Dr. Williams, that is the story almost everywhere in the country. You had
Yeah.
talked about
Coast to
like,
coast.
right, you had talked about the drop off, or so many people maybe do leave their home, their city of origin to start their life and to start
Yep.
adulting, to spread their wings. But if you come back or if you stay, where are those relational communities? Where are your
Mhm.
friends? And I mean, Genesis, right out the gate, it's like it's not good for man to be alone.
Yes.
And yet we have a really digitally connected generation, sometimes almost toxically connected generation, but really isolated, really lonely, very
Mm-hmm.
discouraged. And I mean, what else for the pastor or young adult leader? What encouragement would you provide a lead pastor tuning in who's like, that's my city too, or a young adult who wants to reach their generation and they're like, that's my story as well? What encouragement or practical next steps can you weigh in on?
Yeah. You mentioned in particular the digital age that we live in. So these adults are a generation of leaders who the digital has been a part of their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, referring back to my son, the first video game I ever played was a game called Pong.
Totally.
And if you're listening and you don't know what Pong is, just go to YouTube and look up Pong. And the reason it was called Pong because you would hit the ball and then say ping and then Pong. Yeah, and that's what they named the
The
game.
little sliders.
The little slide, that's it. And I used to watch my son play NBA, 2K, whatever. And he would sit and program each player. It's still magical to me
Hmm.
that I can pick up one device and I've got my calendar of
Yep.
audio books and I can surf the internet. I could check into my flight. To me, that's still magic. For this generation, it's just life. It's like having indoor plumbing and lights that turn on when you flip a switch.
Yeah.
So someone said, my concern is not AI will become more human, is that we will become more mechanical,
Oof.
Wow. That's good. I
right?
agree. Mm-hmm.
So there's this growing kind of oddity that's happening where people are replacing real life relationships and encounters with digital ones.
Yeah. What have you seen, or how would you process this question? This is not even in the notes, but just thinking through like we can create our avatar, we can create a false persona, we can use pictures that are 30 years old that are edited, and you end up on a dating app or wherever people are trying to find their future spouse, and they're like, you're like 30, 40 years old. Like that's when you were like 18, ripped, and an athlete. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
that's not you. So when people are like, there's constant need for image management in so many ways, shapes, and forms. How have you, or maybe you haven't thought about this, but my mind goes here, like, how do we create the ability for young adults to fail, to be gritty, to have um, critical thinking, to
Totally.
have problem solving skills when the answer of AI can generate it at our fingertips. We lose our spiritual walk with Jesus because our time is consumed by anything but him. How do we as leaders point people to Christ and love people where they're at while still connecting to the day and age and recognize like the era of I grew up, I'm a millennial. How I grew up, it does not exist anymore.
Totally.
No.
So how do we as leaders, or would you encourage pastors or maybe people that are presidents working at universities or on any college campus, how do we get how do we call it greatness in a generation that need to learn to be gritty in ways that maybe they'll never experience to the degree like you did with the boomers and the people
Wow.
who are teaching you how to be silent? Like,
Wow.
how do we wrestle that tension? I mean, maybe this is a millennial thing because I'm living between two worlds
I think
as a
it's
Yeah.
millennial.
I think it's important to talk about.
Because the spiritual drop off is not only what you recognize at the age of 18 into college, it's after college too. I can't
Yes.
tell you how many people that graduated from a solid Christian university, they were a part of a Chi Alpha or some type of on campus group of spirituality where they had their community, and then they get into the real world, quote unquote, and they're like, I lost it all. And it's
Yes.
back to that 18-year-old mindset of like, whoa, how do I do this? So untangle that big thought right there in any way, shape, and form. But
Yeah.
there's so many layers, I think, to that. And I'd be interested to see where you want to take it and where you want to go.
Sure. Um, I've been in my role as president at North Central for 10 months now. Prior to that, so I left the pastorate to come teach here. And I basically committed to teach students what I had been doing the last 28 years in 2022. And now, fast forward, I'm serving as president. One of the classes I taught, which was actually my first class, it was entitled Personal Formation for the Spiritual Leader. And one of the things we would talk about is the message of simplicity
Mm-hmm.
and having a simple life. And I put up a quote, and I would kind of bait and switch the students with this. I put up a quote that read something like this. It was written by a French theologian that said, amidst the busyness of our current world, our souls ache for the simple life.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get the students to say, what year do you think this was written?
1700s. No, I have no idea.
You're exactly right. He wrote it in like 1786.
You'd have
So
thought it was today.
so you think, right, that it's not just today's generation that's yearning for, I think every generation there's been something to distract us, something to take us to disconnect from real life. Even if you study the Roman culture, they would talk about our our younger generation is going to be the downfall of our nation. So there's always this angst of the older generation on can we trust the younger ones to get it right? The younger generation yearning for space to fail and safety nets and let me try and I'm going to get it wrong and it's okay and just be a safe place for me to come back to. So I think we're all wrestling through that. I listened to a Carey Newhoff podcast once, and he talked about how he turned his phone, all the notifications off, put his phone in constant do not disturb, made sure people that need to get in touch with him were on his favorites. And he said, my phone went from being this intrusive thing to a tool again.
Mm.
Ooh, that's good.
And I finished that podcast and I went and took off all my notifications and put my phone to do not disturb and all of it. And now the phone is back a tool again. And I can tell you, I can work for hours and not even think to pick the phone up and look at it. So I think there's some of it we all have to wrestle with the realities of the world that we live in and what does it mean to be counterculture. And it almost seems comical that we have to tell ourselves, man, maybe for Lent, I need to fast from
Mm-hmm.
social
Hmm.
media. But
Yeah.
Hmm.
that's a reality, right?
Yeah, that's so good. Dr. Williams, I have another question. These three words came into my mind while you're just talking right there. And the word incubator,
Mm,
greenhouse, and laboratory.
mm.
As a university or as a young adult ministry, we might have people for one semester. We might have them for 4 years. We might have them in a graduate program and getting their master's and their doctorate. We might have people in young adult ministry from 18 to 30 that are here. I'm for
Totally.
12 years. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a lifer. How do we create a space, whether we're on a college campus or in our ministries of leadership? Like, an incubator is made to protect and to keep things alive,
That's good.
but it's enabling them to like almost breathe on their own, right? Like, we're keeping
Hmm.
them alive at the expense of them not letting them fail or take their first breath, like as young adults. Then you have the greenhouse where it's like, we're going to teach you how to get planted, but if you plant and you leave too soon, like in the Midwest, you know that if you try to plant a tree in mid-February outside, it's not going to
Not
last.
happening.
Not gonna
But if you
last.
wait on God's timing and you stick around until he releases you and you are transplanted and potted somewhere else, you're going to thrive because of the sustainability. You've experienced the wind, the water, just that growth process. But then we have the laboratory where you have the ability to experiment and to fail and learn and maybe shift some equations or maybe some approaches in leadership or how you study or how you seek God. How or what comes to mind when I say those three words of incubator, greenhouse, and laboratory when it comes to leadership development and preparing the saints essentially to like do what God's called them to do, but help them while we have them?
So I've been challenging my staff with these words. We have to stop being a repository of knowledge
Mm.
and start being a curator of experiences,
I like that. That's
Whoa.
good.
right? Now, I'm not bright enough to come up with that. My mentor actually told me that as I stepped into the role of president,
How do
but
you
I thought it was really
differentiate?
good.
How
So,
do you differentiate those two?
yeah, that's it, right? Because if we're a repository of knowledge, we say, come here. It's your responsibility now to catch whatever we kind of cast. You internalize it and then you leave smarter versus we're going to be that, as you said it, that laboratory where you can put on a lab coat, put on the gloves, wear the respirator, but you're going to dig in, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My son he's in med school. He's doing a dual MD PhD. And when he was in pre-med, he would call me, Dad, we're working on a cadaver. I'm like, what? That's a dead person. He said, no, it's not a dead person. It's a cadaver. It's someone who dedicated themselves to science.
Yep.
But the thrill of him being able to actually take this cadaver and open it and see what the lungs actually look like. It wasn't just someone teaching him in a two-dimensional way,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
here's the respiratory system. It's a let's open up and you actually get to see it. And here's what a lung feels like. And here's what a tumor growing in a lung feels like. And so I think that's what we've got to do. And in ministry setting, that's what we're all about here in North Central. So how do we help young students that are coming here not just have this two-dimensional lecture, note take, regurgitate a test, but
Right.
really engage in real life practices where they get to experiment and get to do lab work. And so that's what we're really focused on. Yesterday, I met with someone that does institutional research for us, and she began to help me to understand that as Gen Alpha, so now you
Mm-hmm.
guys are Gen Z, but now as Gen Alpha steps into
Mm-hmm.
college,
Mm-hmm.
her caution and encouragement to me was they will not come to class to learn something they can learn on their own
Mm-hmm.
online.
Yep.
So we as an institution are going to have to figure out how do we engage them to say, here's the value of learning that you can't get being in your dorm room or being at home by coming to this class. And obviously, as of being a pastor for so many years, I thought about, man, this is going to put now an extra burden on the church because
Mm-hmm.
people can hear the best preaching in the world today at the
Mhm.
fingertips. So we've got to give them something more than just a guarantee of good preaching on Sunday. It's got to be something where it's experiential, where they get to coached and trained and get developed. So I could go on and on and on.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna drill down here for a second, but you
Yes,
called
sir.
it, was it curator of experiences? Was that it? Or a curate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. A
Uh,
repository of knowledge versus curator of experiences.
Mhm.
Amen to that. I think often about in our context, okay, young adult ministry, what can we do in a living room that we cannot do in a large auditorium? You probably not most you might not want to have a meal home cooked or whatever, but you get in a living room or a dining room and you get in somebody's home, college students and young adults, if you feed them, they will come like a good
Yes.
home cooked meal.
House hang.
What time? Like, see you next week. Like, and but I just think that there are things that you can do in a small group that you can't do on a stage.
Yes.
I mean, quite frankly, there's things you can do on a stage that are more challenging,
Sure.
but you really have to pay attention to where are we, what is the setting, and how are we stewarding the setting. I'm a millennial and we live near Mall of America in Minneapolis. And so for the listener, I bank online. I can think of one time, maybe in the last 5 years, where I've gone in person to a bank. We have a bank, but I just use the app, pay bills. I barely have a checkbook. I mean, what is cash? What is a checkbook? Anyway, but I go and so here's the thing. At the Mall of America, first floor east, there is the Capital One Cafe.
Hmm.
And they've realized that the future, a building might not be a bad investment, but like, are we really going to have empty skyscrapers with remote work? Are we really going to have empty banks like
That's right.
when you need more of a tech team that's not even bankers, but they're experiencing like troubleshooting and helping with online transactions. But I think that I had a field trip, my favorite days in school, North Central or anyway, they're field trip days. I love the experiences. But I had my own field trip at Mall of America, Dr. Williams, because I learned so much because I had a great latte. I had a quiet workplace. There's an ATM if you do
Yep.
need it. But it was almost thinking in less of like a one, but like if you, an innovative church in my experience is National Community Church, Washington, D.C. They're rethinking an entire city block. Like you quoted the Roman times, but way back, kind of the watering hole or the water
Yes.
cooler of a
Mhm.
society was the church. It
Yes.
was the
Mm,
synagogue.
right.
This is where people gathered, and this was kind of and so I think we need to think in terms of. I love what you just said. And are there any other things that you're innovating with or thinking through as you're curating experiences? I'll stop talking by saying this. My experience when I was at North Central undergrad and grad school, I now serve one day a week leading young adults at a church where the pastor used to be the vice president. Our paths crossed at North Central. So the mentorship, the access to chapel speakers, the access to godly community and friendships. Could I have gotten that experience or information online? It wasn't quite the same. I was also listening to podcasts and different things. I think online has definitely changed, but it's harder to find those lifelong
Yes.
friendships
Mhm.
and relationships. How are you fostering community? What are your thoughts on what does success look like in the lab, in the classroom for the future church leader who's called a ministry, but they do need grit and they don't just need
Mhm.
information, but they need that formation, those experiences that are going to help form them. What are
Yes.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great observation. First of all, I I brag on North Central alumni, and
Mm,
I say North Central's alumni changes the world. And that's no doubt. You guys are proof of that, right? Look at what you're doing with your ministry, your heart, your approach, your commitment to being servant leaders. I mean, that's the type of product North Central prides itself on. So if you're listening and you want to have that type of experience, reach out to us, right?
That's
We can
right.
Real.
help you.
For real.
You know, we're looking at everything. When I stepped into the role, first of all, status quo is not working,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I love that you went there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Wow. Thank you.
yeah, status quo is not working. Education in America, the status quo is not working. We were at a national, the, see if I can get it right, the um, Coalition of Christian
Oh,
Colleges and Universities,
totally.
CCCU.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And someone stood up and said, education in America is broken. Because the same student that's wrestling with, do I want a 100-year mortgage? Do I want a 120-month car note? Do I want to go in debt to learn?
Mm.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just like the classroom can't just be two-dimensional, the college experience can't be two-dimensional. It's gotta now morph, right? So we are saying, what does it look like to bring experiential learning into every area and aspect
Yeah.
of our experience here at North Central for students? How do we ensure our students are both thinking about the city
Yeah.
and thinking about the world?
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus doesn't give us the luxury to say yes to one and no to the other,
Right. Yep.
right?
Exactly.
Yep.
He wept over twice. We read
Mm.
Jesus crying. He weeps over his friend Lazarus, this individual that was suffering and died, and he wept over a city, over Jerusalem. And I think that's what we're striving for to build into North Central students this sense of I'm compassionate for the individual, but I also care about the macro narrative of a
Mm-hmm.
city, of a country, of a nation, right, of the world. I don't have the luxury of saying I don't care what's happening there. I have to care, right? So that's why North Central students like a Dick Brogdon ends up
Mm-hmm.
creating Live Dead, or
Mm-hmm.
you get fighting human trafficking, and
Mm-hmm.
just on and on and on. Compassionate Ministry, or Monica De Laurentiis, she and her husband that are, she'll literally walk into a trap house and pull out one of her members that has backslid. It's all about that experience. So we're really working through it. And
Mm-hmm.
you talked about the Capital One
Mm-hmm.
versus the downtown marble bank with the lions that speak to institutionality, that says
Yep.
your money's safe here. I don't know that that's a message people need now. They need
Wow.
the Capital One experience of, hey, come on in. I've been to that cafe.
It's cool, isn't
It
it?
is cool.
Futuristic, and
Yeah,
it weirdly makes sense.
it does. And
The hospitality.
you it's open to everybody, but if you
Correct.
have a card, if you have a Capital One card, you get a little discount on your beverages and
Mm-hmm.
snacks, right?
Yep.
So there may be something there for us to use, but I think we've got to be able to say there's big room. I love how you put that. There's stuff that happens in the big room, and that stuff needs to happen.
Totally.
So we're not going to solve the problem by gutting Sunday morning and
Mm-mm.
getting rid of corporate expressions of worship. We've got to make sure we also include that individualized attention
Yeah.
that we so desperately need.
Yeah.
I want to come back to something. I don't even know if you realized you said this, but I think you said it and I jotted it down quick. But you had referenced getting leadership right. And it made me ask the question for young leaders listening, myself included, um, want to finish well. I want to be faithful. I want to hear that well done, good and faithful servant. How do we get it right? How do we get leadership right? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. Wow. Uh, I paused because recently I've seen a couple friends that's had moral failures,
Mm,
and I've literally been front row seat to
mm,
the total and absolute devastation that happens. the breakdown of a marriage, the loss of credibility, the a ministry that was so sacrificially built fall apart in an instant.
Mm.
And so I think sometimes we forget the magnitude of what happens on the other side of the crash. When I was a young leader, there was a group called the Winans. Now you may hear
Yeah.
the name Winan because their little sister is now the queen mother of gospel music, right? CC Winan.
CC.
CC,
Yeah, yeah,
yep,
yeah.
yep.
But her big brothers
Wow.
had a singing group called the Winans,
Wow.
and their songs were so rich, and it resonated with me as a young guy who didn't grow up in the church and got saved, and so their sound, their music resonated with me so much. But they were so rich in theology. So one of the songs they sang was, it's good to know he'll be there if ever I fall.
Mm,
And it's better to know I don't have to fall at all because he's able to keep me.
come
Whoa.
on. Yeah,
Whoa.
that's good.
Right. And I can still hear the kind of funk guitar that they had in that and the beat.
That's
And it
right.
was cool and it would make my speakers thump. But the words still live in my heart, right? And so I think we have to accept the reality that none of us are free from one bad decision, one moment of
Wow.
weakness
Mm-hmm.
where
Wow.
we say yes to the wrong thing and it can be devastating. Now, does that mean we get cut off from heaven? No. Does it mean that the Lord can't bring us back? No. But man, it's so better to live that life of constant. And I was blessed to have a mentor that I would say the reason I'm in the Assemblies of God today is because of him. And I know
Wow.
your podcast is not just for AG leaders, but he was the person the first godly man I got to really see up close
That's good.
and watch the interior of his life, watch how he related to his wife, watch how he raised his children, watched how he responded when people betrayed him in ministry, treated him unfairly, and looked at how he responded to it. And I think his life so touched mine that it gave me a framework. And so that daily walk of connecting with Christ, staying close to him, continuing to date my wife, continuing to have friends that
Mm-hmm.
aren't blown away with your titles and positions that can really just ask you tough questions and hard
Mm-hmm.
things. And I hate to be Debbie Downer, but you get to a point where you lose your grandparents, you lose your parents.
Mm.
I'm at a stage now where I'm even losing people that I admire and I held as heroes and mentors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now all I've got is friends,
Wow. Yeah.
right? And so you need good friends in your life, people you can be honest with. And um, yeah, it's no easy answer and nowhere to run to get help, nowhere to rest when you get weary and tired, know how to find safe places that you can take your armor off
Mm-hmm.
and
Whoa.
just be real.
Yeah.
One of my colleagues, and I'll stop talking and let you ask another question. When I became president, we were really good friends as faculty members, right? Enjoy spending time together. And they've been in our home, we've been in their home. We barbecue and eat together and everything. And he came up to me at my inauguration. He said, I know you're now president, and if that changes the dynamics of our relationship, I want you to know I understand that. And I said, man, I can't be President Williams to everybody all the time. I need
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
somebody I can just be Darnell with, right?
Wow.
That's good. Yeah.
Wow.
And we kind of smiled and hugged and embraced each other. And I think he appreciated the fact that I still valued the relationship. And I appreciated the fact that he had the wherewithal to even say that to me. Hey, Mr. President, I don't ever want you to feel like our friendship is putting you in a compromising situation. So And just some anecdotal stuff off the top of my head. Those would be things that I would say. Keep your personal walk with Jesus. Take it serious. Don't
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
don't
Yes.
give yourself a pass. Listen, the devil is playing for keeps,
Mm-hmm.
and the devastation of sin is real.
Yeah. Yes.
I love that you went there like you did with your mentor and some friendships. I heard Andy Crouch not that long ago share about a concept that I had never heard of before, but he called it eulogists.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yes,
it was so out there that
yes,
I was like, what is he talking about? But he has a group of friends. I think there's like 5 or 6 of them, him and maybe 5, but they are committed to be lifelong friends.
yeah,
And why they call themselves the eulogists is they're committed to reading the eulogy at one
yeah,
another's funerals.
yeah.
And so, our heart of like, even why does young adults today exist? It's definitely Psalm 145. One generation is to tell the next
That's right.
about the marvelous deeds of God and share about his mighty acts. And at the same time, I actually believe differently about ministry being lonely. I think you're sometimes given more visibility to relationships or you're put in some different opportunities. And it is sometimes a unique, like,
Dynamic.
pastor, by this, are we friends? There's dual roles. Like, what is going on here? But my prayer today, why I say that is for the leader listening, like get your way to August in the West Coast for the leader gathering, or come in March to the leader conference in Minnesota. Come to the weekend and bring a group to camp in May. Like, I think these are places that sometimes you need to get in the room
Yes,
where those lifelong friendships or perhaps eulogists could form. I think it
Yeah.
was Billy Graham who said, find some friends, change the world, and have fun doing it.
can't get better advice than that.
Oh man, I think it's so good. And I think just encouraging the listener, like Josiah said, like ministry doesn't have to be lonely. It's just, are you willing to open yourself up and open
Yes,
up your home to others? And I
yes,
think, I don't know if I said this here, but I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was this older woman, and she has a gift of hospitality, loves the Lord, and she invites people in. Her husband has his role, and they've done some ministry in the past. But she's like, the moment you invite somebody into your home, that is you extending your life. Like you're inviting that person into your life. And I'm just grateful for the people who've opened their homes to us. And
Seriously.
I guess what my challenge would be for the listener today, when's the last time that you opened up your home to a young adult? When's the last time you hosted a connect group or a Bible study? Or, in the Midwest, I'm not from Minnesota. So when people give you their at like any direction except for your home address, like that says something to me. And I'm like, I'm outside your house now. I'll see you in 6 months. Are we friends? Like, I don't want those. I can't sustain those friendships if I see you twice a year. But at North Central, I'm just reminded of all the amazing professors I think Josiah's experienced and I have. And if anybody does feel discouraged, there was this one gentleman who would just come in there and he would say, he'd have us repeat it as a class every single day that we had class with him. And he's like, hey, people will fail you. Organizations will guard their territory, but God is faithful.
yes,
People will fail you, organizations will guard their territory, but God is faithful. And I think when you're called into ministry or you're in those roles of leadership, like sometimes there are decisions made with like for you without you in the room. Sometimes it's your job to bring the people into the room and have the conversations about the next generation with them being present in the room.
So good.
And sometimes it's us taking our prayers before the Lord, of furthering our education or our spiritual journey and our influence and handing it back to the Lord and thanking Him in that process. So, one final question before we lean into the 5 and 5, Dr. Williams, how would you encourage the young adult pastor who's listening that wants to further their education and become a lifelong leader? What would you say to them today? Maybe they have their 4 year degree, but they're looking for more.
yeah. Such great questions, such great observations. You guys are amazing. There's education is a transformative process.
Mm-hmm.
You can pay to get an honorary degree, especially doctoral degrees. You can pay. There's degree mills that you give them $500 and write a 40-page paper. They'll give you a sheet of paper that says you are now Dr. So and so. What you can't pay for is the transformational process that education brings you.
Hmm.
Whoa.
So I would say to a leader, if you feel like, you know what, I've kind of ran off the fuel of yesterday and I'm starting
Mm,
to feel my tank empty, the
mm-hmm.
best way to fill that back up is to become a student.
Mm,
Get around your peers. It'll stimulate you intellectually. It'll keep you current around what the trends and the language of education is today. Um, so that's one thing.
Hmm.
Number two, you need that tribe. You find your tribe. You find who your peers are. You find the people that are running in the same lane in the same direction as you, and you develop these lifelong relationships and friendships. It almost becomes like a band of brothers, like in a band of sisters, if I could say that.
Hmm.
yeah.
You're walking on this journey together. You're not alone. I love what you said earlier about the eulogist. I hadn't heard that. I'm gonna look it up. Now, if you're young, it sounds morbid.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get older and you realize how fast
But
life
then you get
goes.
older and you realize, like I got guys in my life, like I know, right? They're going, I introduced one of my friends to another one. I said, he's either going to be a pallbearer or one of my eulogists, one of the two,
There you
right?
go.
Whoa. Whoa.
And so you need that. You need to find your brethren. You need to find that tribe that you connect to and relate to. So if you feel like the bread is getting a little stale, let's bake some fresh bread together.
I love
Whoa.
it. I love
Whoa.
it.
What an invitation. I was just in a room where Christine Kane was sharing last week, and it stuck with me how she said, the goal is that the light in you is always brighter than the light that's on you. And she talked
Ooh,
about turning 60. And I have observed this from her, but what she was saying is like when she was 30 in Australia, leading Youth Alive, and there was four teenagers that she was like on her face praying before the God of heaven, like to have anything to offer these girls. And then now she's 60, still preaching at Passion or whatever, not just using canned messages, but truly seeking God for that manna,
true.
that daily
Yeah.
bread. And I guess I'll just be honest, that's one of my greatest fears in leadership is to become self-reliant or self-sustaining because when I started out, I had no clue what I was doing or what God was doing. But there was a dependence and a desperation that I don't want to lose that's so easy to think of like, well, what worked? What did we do last year? What's everybody else doing? Versus like, you know
What's
what?
God saying?
Getting into that secret place, trusting God. What else is on your heart for young leaders? Or what's a question that we haven't asked you that nobody's asked you that really we all should be asking you about?
Wow. I would say another thing that has probably helped me become the person that I am is marrying the person that I did. My wife is an incredible lady. She has it's hard for me to explain, so I'm just going to tell you. If you want a prayer answered, you ask that lady to pray for you.
Let's go.
I'm telling you, I don't understand it. I don't think it's fair. I don't much appreciate it, right? Because
Wow.
I pray, I got to first of all get undistracted, and then I got to fight off all these. And my wife prays, it's like God takes her up in his lap and just whispers, what do you want me to do for you? Right?
She's in the war
Uh,
room, man. That's why.
yeah, exactly. So, I credit a lot. Again, I got saved at 16. I was a kid from Cleveland, Ohio, man. I was rough around the edges um, and the Lord used my wife to help me. So
Wow.
I would probably give her lots of kudos and credit for the guy. I heard a funny story about uh, a CEO was walking through the entryway of his building and he saw the custodian wipe mopping the floor, and his wife knew they had dated earlier, and so he turned to his wife on the elevator and said, "Well, aren't you glad you married me because if you didn't marry me, you'd be married to the custodian. And she said, no, if I married him, he'd be the CEO. So it's
Oh,
that's kind of how I
Found a
feel, right?
treasure. You found a
that's
Yeah,
treasure.
good.
right.
That
So
is so
That's a good
funny.
yeah,
I
word.
love that. That's a fun visual. Well, we've kind of come to like the end of the show today,
yes,
and
ma'am.
we love to have 5 and 5, so it's 5 minutes on the clock, 5 questions, kind of like the
Hmm.
home run derby, like a back to back to back. Are
Yep.
you ready for the challenge?
Let's go.
All right. So, question number one: how would you encourage the young leader just starting out, who's maybe very charismatic, but still has some character development, which we're never going to arrive? But how would you encourage that person not to build a ministry on the charismatic side and allow God to build their character?
Your charisma can take you where your character can't keep you.
That's good. Well
Selah.
said. That's all we need.
A whole word.
Don't do that. Allow the Lord to shape your character. Allow the Holy Spirit. And sometimes we who are open to the move of the Spirit, the work of the Spirit, the demonstrations of the Spirit, we're very, expressive and what do I want to say? You know, charismatic in
Hmm.
our preaching and our
Hmm.
worship. Demonstrative was the word I
Yeah.
was thinking about. Sometimes we neglect the sweetness of the Holy Spirit developing the fruit in us that we need.
Great.
My. Okay. What about you work with so many college students, and what we believe is there's so much potential. God is moving. It's an exciting place and space to be around. If you could leave the younger generation with one piece of advice, insight, encouragement, what's that one non-negotiable for you?
Yeah. Um, I never met him, but there was a Christian who used to do motivational talks, and he would say, work harder on yourself than you work on any job.
Mm,
Work harder on yourself than you work at any job. Because the work you do for yourself will always make you a better person, a better leader than just the drudgery of kind of saying, okay, I got to get up and go to work and I got to function and perform. I'm going to work hard on myself. I'm going to hold myself to a high standard. I'm going to have a solid work ethic. I'm going to, be willing to get up early, go to bed a little later, go when I'm tired, perform even when I feel exhausted. Jim Rome said that. So work harder on yourself. And if you work hard on yourself, you'll always be attractive. People will always be attracted to you. You'll never not have an opportunity. You'll be turning opportunities away because that ability to work on yourself and grow yourself and develop yourself, there's no dollar you can put on that.
that's so good. All right. Well,
Yeah.
here's the curveball,
All
Dr.
right.
Williams.
Curveball.
Curveball. Here we go. If you could become the host for one question, if you had any question that you'd like to ask me and Josiah, what would you want to know today?
How can I best serve the demographic that you're leading?
Hmm. Want to go first?
Yeah, I think of one of the things is, first of all, side note, you're doing it. You're on the podcast and you're pouring out wisdom. It's like a master class. And coming to the March Leader Conference, we're so appreciative. I'd say on a collective level and at scale, what we're seeing is every young adult is like, what's wrecking me, Dr. Williams, is so many young adults come to us, 18 to 30, and they're still trying to earn a blessing from their parents, and they might never get it because they don't have access to the parents, or maybe they're
Mm,
gone or they were never in the picture. So that role of a spiritual mother, a spiritual father, that mentor, even to go like this, that prophetic voice
mm,
of being willing to call out greatness in somebody that doesn't believe in themselves, and the amount of motherlessness, fatherlessness,
mm,
orphan generation that we're seeing is like, so many people have never been prayed for
Yep.
who are a young
wow.
adult by a parent or blessed. And so if you can pray and bless a generation, oh my word, that might be ministering to one of the deepest soul longings that
Wow.
I actually think comes from God
Yes.
to receive the blessing from the Father.
Yeah.
Praise God.
And that's where I would go. What would you add?
Oh man. I feel like just I said, I think you're doing it, but if I were to answer it like at a universal level, like a university level, for the young adults that you get to serve within that space that are going to be in lead roles all over the world at some
Hmm.
point, who that they're
Hmm.
here, they're not coming, they're here, and they're
Right.
waiting for that opportunity. I have a deep conviction for pure and holy living. And
Mhm.
how do we as leaders not only live that out ourselves, but how do we hold their feet to the fire of saying, you want to be married someday? Then let's stop looking at pornography. You want to be a pastor someday? Then get out of the bedroom, get out of the house with your girlfriend or boyfriend. If just stop putting yourself in compromising situations. Like, how do we call a generation out in love and up in truth? Meaning, I love you too much not to tell you this because someday I'm gonna have to stand before the Lord. And I think of Ezekiel, I think it's chapter three,
Mhm.
30 in that
Mhm.
area, of like, if God's called me to be a form of a watchman and I don't warn you, your blood is on my hands. But if I
That's right.
warn you and you choose to be disobedient, I did what I was supposed to do and I hate to see it. But how do like I don't know, like I have a huge, and I'm not talking like purity culture, like I don't want that stigma, but I'm like, how do we raise the bar when it comes to this pure-hearted living for Jesus and living that out from what we see to what we listen to what we say. And the biggest thing is like Josiah and I talk about this a lot, and it's just like with the climate of Minneapolis and the world and
Totally.
presidential elections and who's in charge and just the polarization and packaged
Mhm.
ethics. My challenge for all leaders would be able to say like, let's stop doing the enemy's job for him. If we're Christians and we're called to build God's kingdom, can we see brothers and sisters like God sees them and call out greatness even in a hurting world and even in a difficult time? So it's like, how do we teach young leaders to wrestle through those things, but stay true to scripture and the word of God and not become legalistic in the process? So I don't know what that looks like, but like those are the things I wrestle with, and I'm like, oh, if they only knew, like, there's repercussions to the decisions that you're making. So how I want to see a generation on their faces, and I want to see when everybody else is asked to bow, I want them to stand, and when they're called to stand,
Hallelujah.
they need to bow. Like, how
Yes.
do we create and how do we pray or how do we demonstrate? I mean, God's gonna do what he wants to do, and I'm not God, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, that dependence, like Josiah was like, Lord, help me to never lose my wonder and help me to never like teach me to live above reproach.
Mm.
And who's holding my feet to the fire and who's am I holding to the fire? So I don't know what that is or means for you, but that's what comes to my mind and heart.
Well, thank you. And I think those two things.
Mm.
How do we receive the heart and care of a father? And then how do we hold ourselves accountable to that love that he has
Mm-hmm.
as stewards of a holy life?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
And I think if we get those two things right, man, everything else is details.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one detail we haven't talked about
Mm.
is your
Mhm.
favorite sport, team, and
Oh.
athlete of all time.
Wow. All right. I'm a big NFL guy.
Okay.
If you see right behind me, I'm from Cleveland.
All
Forgive
right.
me. I'm a Cleveland Brown fan. I know. I know. You don't have to
No
tell me.
forgiveness
I,
needed.
I, I know. I know. Yeah. Favorite athlete of all time, Muhammad Ali.
Ooh,
Whoa.
here we go.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thing like a bee, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right. Ooh, what should I ask him? This one or this one?
You choose.
Okay. Because we have a young adult audience, last and final question. If you could tell your 22-year-old self one thing about ministry and the calling of God, what would you tell your 22-year-old self?
It'd be one response, but an A and a B. So A would be stop taking yourself so seriously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Relax. The Lord's going to perform what he promised,
That's good.
right? Just just walk it out. And number two, enjoy the journey. Just enjoy it. Just you're gonna face some highs and lows, and there's gonna be some difficulties, but that persistence is what going to carry is what's going to carry you through. So don't take yourself so serious and stay persistent.
I love that.
Both of
Yeah.
those speak to me deeply. Was just reading the Bible in a year plan, and it had me in Matthew, the invitation from Jesus. If any of you is weary, carrying a heavy burden, come to me. I'll
Yes.
give you rest. And I just golfed with Pastor Jerry down in Arizona, who's 80, and I was so inspired. And what I realized, I actually did okay golfing, which was a miracle. Hadn't golfed much. We got young kids, but when my heart rate was like this, or I was worried of what people thought, I would chunk it that way or splice it this way. But if I took a deep breath and just went, I enjoyed it, and it was so much more
Yes.
fun, and I actually did better. And so I
Yes.
wonder if God wouldn't be speaking that to us in leadership, in young adult ministry, to enjoy the journey, to trust Him, to take a deep breath, and to relax. Thanks so much for today's conversation,
Hey,
Dr. Williams.
this was amazing.
Oh, good.
This was
I'm so glad
amazing.
you were able to join us.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. We wanted to invite you to the weekend, Young Adult Weekend, ages 18 through 30, starting May 15th through 17th. We will have Emmanuel live worship, Ray Clark, Pastor Corey Kolanowski. We'll have breakout sessions, and check out the show notes to get signed up today.